Hello everyone! Today I'm going to go through all of these drawers, pull everything out, and show you my entire watercolour collection. Oh my lord, I have way too many paints. Now if you haven't seen my video doing my studio tour, I did show this in there. It's basically a shelf thing that I got from my local art store because they were refurbishing and they were giving this away, and I thought this would be really great for storing all of my paint tubes. Now, I know I've got loads of them here, but actually this shelf down to this shelf is the full range of Sennelier paints, and I'm going to show you what they looked like when I originally got them and how they were packaged. I keep all of my tubes here, and now I have all of the actual palettes with pans in this set of drawers. I think I will start with the smaller sets first. I'll pull these out as I go as well, so I can match up the tubes with the palettes that I have in here. And I will do this one step at a time because it's quite overwhelming actually looking at all of the things I have in here. So I'll try and put them in some semblance of an order, and I'll start probably with the smaller, maybe cheaper sets first and work my way up to the more expensive and more professional sets. Okay, so I've got a few more miscellaneous sets. The first one is this Pebeo watercolour aquarelle fine that I impulse bought a while ago, and I've barely used it because I remember the paints were pretty awful. They were really chalky and I hated them immediately. I will test them again, I think, because I actually haven't used this for maybe 2 years, so I just don't really remember what they're like. But I think they were pretty horrible, so if anything, I like the tin. I think the tin is really cute, so I would keep that, but the likelihood of me throwing out these paints and replacing them with nicer ones is pretty great, I think. But it's just been up the back of one of the bottom drawers and I'd forgotten about it for a while. So yeah, that was a buyer's remorse purchase, I can tell you. It was very disappointing. The next one is one of those little sets of Viviva colour sheets. Super vivid transparent watercolours, 16 colours, and this is the Etchr limited edition palette, which I think came with a couple of different colours, and I've used it a little bit. It's actually surprisingly good. You can see where it's the paint's coming off. I might do a demonstration of these at some stage just so you can see them. They're really nifty to put in a bag or something, you know, if you've only got a small amount of stuff you can carry. It's great for travelling. So I've mucked around with them a bit. They're pleasant colours, they're nice. It's even got a makeshift little mixing palette, although it's pretty average and it does stain quite badly. But this was just something I happened to see one day on Etchr's website, and they weren't too expensive, so I thought I would try them out. And yeah, these are actually surprisingly good. If you had to pick between a set of these or these, I'd get these over the Pebeos any day. These are actually really vibrant and lovely and transparent, so yeah, a nice set of colours. And the other, I guess, cheap random set I have are these. The company is called Zart. It's actually a local art store that's in Melbourne, and it provides art supplies for schools, so you can get a wholesale account, but you can also just buy directly from the public, which is quite nice. And I bought these. I happened to go in there and have a browse, and I saw these and thought I would try them out. They're pearlescent watercolour paints. I've used them a bit, and can you see the sheen in that? They are quite nice. They are maybe not that strong, but they're actually quite decent paints, and that iridescent purple is really lovely. So I've used these a little bit here and there just when I want to add something that's got a pearlescent sheen to it. So those are the things I have that are probably my cheaper sets, although the Pebeo set wasn't that cheap. Okay, and now I'm going to give a little sneaky preview because I actually only just picked this up, and I'm going to do another art haul from Aldi, which is where I got these from, so that's a future video coming up, but I thought since I'm doing my watercolours I may as well include this set. I've been wanting one of these for a while, and there are a few different brands that do them, but they've always been really expensive, and you know, sort of around the $40 range, and I'm going, well, that seems a bit much, but this was $13 or $12.99 at Aldi, and so I grabbed one, and I haven't used it yet. I'll just quickly unbox it because it is really cute. I am going to show this again in my art haul that I will do in a future video, but oh my god, can't get it open. Okay, there we go. And it's so cute. It comes with a little water brush. It's got like a little sponge here, and then if I flip it around, how cool is that? And it even has a couple of little mixing wells at the back, so I could not resist. That is so cute, and that would fit in my handbag really nicely. Can't tell you what the paints are like, that's for a future video, but I just thought I'd show a sneak peek of this one. Moving on to my Japanese paints. These are Gansai Tambi, and they are from Japan. Their brand is Kuretake, and they're fairly common. You'll see these on all sorts of places like Amazon, and I even bought these in a local art store. They were all, I think, half price, and so I just grabbed all 3 sets. They are all pearlescent and shimmery colours. They're really pretty. I haven't used them a huge amount yet, but I just love the pans that they come in. They're so wonderful. And let's pull one of those out. They're enormous pans, and each one holds quite a lot of paint, although I don't think you can get replacements, single replacements. I could not tell you. And let me just quickly pull out. There's an example of what they look like. I coloured it in black so that I could paint over the top of it. And you get a nice shimmer out of those. So they're more of a paint that I would consider to be fairly novelty, but also sometimes if you want to paint something that's whimsical or have something with a bit of shimmer, these are nice to paint on top of things, and they would be good on black watercolour paper too, I imagine. I have yet to get black watercolour paper, so for now I'm just using them really on top of other paints or just on white paper. These are the pearl ones. These ones are a little more opaque, and I noticed that when these ones are on black, they all look exactly the same, but on white you can really see the colour. So these ones I would use on white, and that is the pearl colour set. And then, I can never get these back, you know, when you're on camera it's like, oh, it won't go back in. And then the last one is probably the set that I use the most, are the starry colours, and they're all pretty much gold except for this last one, which says white gold, but is more of a white pearlescent, not really any colour. So it's actually more silver, and I did use this one in my Howl at the Moon painting recently, and I've also used a little bit in a couple of other paintings. That one I did of the Johanna Basford colouring, I did this colour in the background and the light gold. So yeah, I use these off and on. I sometimes forget they're in the bottom of the drawer there, but when I do remember, they come out, and I always really enjoy those. And I've dropped the swatch sheet on the floor, of course. Okay, there it is. Look, I've been looking for that for days, and I just found it, and here we go. See, that looks silver to me rather than gold. But I'll just pop those in there. If they will go, there we are. Easy peasy. Now this set, I think it's Kuretake, but it just happened to be in one of the art stores that is local to me, and they were on sale, I think, were they 60% off, something like that, and so they were selling them out, so I grabbed one, and I've written Kuretake Gansai Tambi here, so, okay, Irodori Kabako set, 6 colours, but this comes with, I've forgotten all about this pen actually. This is a Zeg Mangaka Flexible Fine Cartoonist pen in black, and that's what the nib looks like. And I bring that. So it's one of those fairly flexible Fude style nibs. And In the set it also has a water brush and 6 colours. It has gold, kind of like a magenta-y red, yellow, a darker blue. I think I changed the colours around, a green and like a burnt sienna. So it's quite a strange set. The blue is quite more like an indigo than, say, a blue that you could use to mix things, but it was cheap and I liked it. I thought it was really cute, so I bought it. And I haven't used it that much, but also you can see the red one especially, there's quite a lot of cracking on it. And that was like that when I bought it, so it could just be the pigment. And the last one, and this is sideways so that it will fit, but this is the largest of the Kuretake Gansai Tambi paint sets that I could find. I think it is the 36 set, but we'll flip it round. This is in still fairly good condition. I have used it. There we go, there's the palette, and it came with a swatch chart on here, and it actually worked quite well, so that's very handy to have. And it also has some shimmery colours down the bottom there. And in here, I'll just take that out. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be just a protector screen or if you're meant to use it as a mixing tray, but I kept it on there anyway. And I'll just lay them sideways here so we can see them. They come with numbers. The names are all in Japanese. And while I did live in Japan for a while, I can't remember very much of the language, and I was never any good at reading it, so it's all in kanji as well, which forget that. These are the pans that you can pull out, and they're not really a full pan or a half pan, they're just a Japanese size pan, whatever that is. But yeah, these are really nice. They're quite opaque sometimes, but I actually found them more transparent than what people were saying they are. But I really like them, the colours are lovely. I haven't used them all that much yet. I looked around for quite a long time to get it on special because it's not that cheap, but I think I bought it off Amazon Australia. Eventually they had a sale or something like that, so I snapped them up and I really enjoy them. The good thing with watercolour paints is that they really don't go bad. If you keep them in a nice dry place and take care of the paints, they'll last pretty much forever. So I pull these out whenever I fancy it, and yeah, it's just such a nice set to look at, so I really enjoy them, and they're really nice quality paints. I would highly recommend these if you're looking for a set to begin with. There's loads of colours. This is the 36 colour set. It also comes in 24 and 12 sets as well, and apparently also comes as a 6 set. And I'm pretty sure these are the same. So that is all of my Japanese niceness. These are my 2 White Night sets by St. Petersburg. I grabbed this set off Jackson's. It was on sale and I just thought it looked cute, so I grabbed it. But this is the plein air set, and it is exactly the same as the larger set, which I will show you later. Some of these, well, all of them are doubles to ones I have in this larger set here. But it's a cute little plastic box. Comes with 12 colours, and they're there. They're lovely and bright. The cerulean's got some nice granulation. These are also paints that I would recommend if you're starting out but you want to get something that's of a decent quality. These are very nice. And I did it for ages. I've been looking at these for a long time, and someone was selling a couple of sets that they'd bought when they were in Russia, and she brought them home and she was just trying to sell them off, but they were quite a lot cheaper than they were anywhere else, so I finally managed to pick up a full set of these. There's possibly a 48 set, but this is a 36 set, and here are the colours. It came with this as well, its own swatch card on pretty decent watercolour paper, and I wrote all of the names down on there. But these are really nice. They are a big full pan, maybe slightly larger than a standard size full pan, but they come absolutely packed full of paint, and they're really pigmented, and they last a long time. So I've used these quite a lot. especially that cerulean blue. But they don't seem to be showing any signs of being even used, let alone wearing out. And it's a wonderful set. I use this every so often. It's not my go-to set if I'm doing perhaps a more professional watercolour painting, if for something I'm going to sell, but in my sketchbook and things like that, I do grab these quite a bit. So yeah, I really like them. It's a nice sturdy plastic set, it's not too heavy, and I would highly recommend these if you're starting out, and even if you're a professional watercolourist, these are really, really lovely to use, so highly recommended. And if you want to take a smaller set out, this one's pretty cute too. Jane Davenport watercolours. Now I know a lot of people have these because who could resist these absolutely beautiful tins? I mean, they're so pretty. Ironically, even though Jane Davenport is Australian, these are really, really hard to find in Australia. I can't get over it. It took me ages to find them, and they were also pretty expensive too, which is kind of a bummer. Anyway, I eventually got them, and okay, so these are the 3 palettes open. This one is the brights, this one is the neutrals, and this is the 3rd one she released, the glitzy. And if she ever releases any more, I will no doubt buy them because, I mean, I just have to collect the whole set. I've used these quite a lot. They're really nice. Some of the colours in here are definitely not light fast at all, I don't think. That would be the Mystic and the Best Friend, I think. That would be like a Opera Pink or Opera Rose. It has that fluorescent dye in it as well as this Mystic Purple. But they're really pretty colours. I tend to go for these ones if I want to colour something that's maybe not got realistic colours, and these do have the brightest pinks that I have in, I think, all of my sets. So I've used these quite a lot, but not if I was wanting to paint something that's going to hang on the wall and might fade. But I think most of them are relatively light fast. Don't quote me on that, I have not done the research on these. I am almost 100% convinced that they are identical paints to the Prima Marketing watercolours, of which I have a few, and we will go on to now. A few years ago, I went through a phase of collecting the Prima Marketing watercolour sets because they come in these cute little tins, which are now pretty standard to get, and they kept bringing out set after set after set, and admittedly there are a few that I don't own yet, like the antique pastel one, and I think they've released something else recently, but they've gotten really expensive, and the store that I bought all of these from no longer exists, and they had really good prices, and now it's just really, really hard to find these in Australia, and on Amazon they're also very expensive, so I haven't gotten any more for a while. But these are all been mixed around, this except for this palette, which I've kept as it is because this is the Shimmering Lights palette, and they all come with their own little swatch cards, which I think is a lovely touch. And I've actually got a few extra ones in here because these have come out of other sets that also had shimmery ones, and I decided to put them all together. So you can actually fit far more than 12 paints in these. I'm convinced that these all come from the same South Korean factory as the Jane Davenports, and there is also another brand called Mungyo, and my father has a set of the shimmering colours of Mungyo, and they look identical to these ones, so I'm pretty sure they all come from the same factory and they just have different labels and product names on them. But if you have one set, they are probably all going to be pretty much the same, but it doesn't stop me from having them all. The Woodlands and the Essence were my 2 more recent sets that I got, the last 2. And what I did, because I found that the palettes in them were quite confusing, I actually swapped over all of them. In my Essence set, I now have all the bright colours, all of the earth colours into the Woodland set. There was only one red, I think, which is the Foxberry, and as you can see, that's still quite a brown. But they just didn't really make that much sense as they were, so I think they make a lot more sense now, and I use them a lot more easily like this. But at one stage I had, I think, about 8 of these boxes, 8 or 10 of these boxes, and I got a bit sick of it, so what I did with almost all of my Prima Marketing sets is I got this box, which I've stuck a sticker on. I don't know where I got this box, but I put all of the Prima Marketing sets, Confections, that's the word, Prima Marketing Confections, I could not think of that last word, and I put all of the other sets that I had in here, and I've taken off this flip piece because that was driving me crazy. You can actually do that. If you look on the side, you will see that there's a metal bar that goes through, and if you get a pair of pliers, you can actually pull it out and take off that annoying flippy outy bit that comes in all of these boxes. It's not such a problem on the smaller ones because that's still quite portable to hold, but I find in the 48 set box it's such a nuisance because it flips out and then it takes up that much space on the desk. But if you take that piece out and you have a palette on the side, or you can even use the flippy out piece on the side, it's just a lot more convenient. So in here I've got, off the top of my head, I have the original set, I have the tropicals, I have the pastels, I've got the decadent pies, and I think that might be it. But when you put them all together, they make a pretty cool set, and I use this off and on. Sometimes I forget I have it in the bottom of my tin, and then I pull it out and then I remember, and oh yes, I have all these beautiful colours. They're really lovely. These are also other sets I would recommend if you're looking out for paints that perhaps aren't super expensive but are decent quality. These are really pigmented. I don't know about their light fastness. It's probably the same as the Jane Davenports. I would say it's probably safer to consider them not very light fast. But if you just want to paint for fun, these are fantastic and I highly recommend them. Alright, those are all of my Prima Marketing sets, and I've kept all of the boxes. I took all the paints out, peeled the stickers off, and I used the boxes for other paints. Okay, this is pretty much everything I have for Winsor and Newton, which isn't very much. This is one of the first paint sets I ever got. Years ago, at least 10 years ago I think, and I've used it a bit, but this is the Cotman set, and so these are student grade watercolours. They have a really, really strong smell to them. I can smell it just from here. It's not an unpleasant smell, but I am very sensitive to smell, and I find it quite difficult to work with things that have any kind of odour. And I am just not a big fan of the Cotmans. I know there are people out there who swear by them, but I can't say that I particularly enjoy them. I find them just meh. When you've used professional Winsor and Newtons, I don't know, they're so much nicer than the Cotmans. But it's not like it's a terrible set, but yeah, it's just doesn't do anything for me. And it's got a teeny tiny little brush. That's very adorable, but not the most practical thing in the world. Not the most practical thing in the world. But that's that little set, and I keep it more out of nostalgia than anything else. I have one tube, and this is Potter's Pink. As I've mentioned before in other videos, the Winsor and Newton version of Potter's Pink is my absolute favourite from the ones that I've tried. I've tried Schmincke and Daniel Smith, and they're okay, but this one just seems to be a lot pinker for some reason. Winsor and Newton tubes in Australia are horrendously expensive, and so I haven't really invested in them. But I'll just put that aside. And I bought this after years of looking at them thinking, there is no way that I'm paying the price that they are in Australia, which is over $200 for that. I mean, it's just insane. But I found these on Jackson's website in the UK for something like $70 on sale, and so I had to. It comes with a little cup, and you open it up. I have shown this briefly in another video, but I'm showing it again. And it's got a few little flip out pieces here, which always get stuck. I've painted a little swatch chart, and it also comes with one of those folding brushes. I think this one's actually sable, so this is a nicer quality brush too. And a tiny little water container, which barely fills this thing, only up to about there, so it's great in a pinch, but yeah, you're probably best to have something that has more water in it, which is why I have usually a little flask like this with me as well. But I mentioned last time that I did change out some of the colours, and I just bought them as half pans rather than buying tubes because it was cheaper at the time, and I figured I probably won't use the set enough to actually use up the paints anytime soon, so it wasn't really worth buying tubes. This is what the set looked like when I first got it. It had a yellow ochre as well as a raw sienna. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I just wasn't keen on these three. So, and the alizarin crimson. That was the original alizarin crimson, which is P83, and this is it here. This is also the white and the black, and I've somehow managed to misplace the yellow ochre, but there should be one of those somewhere in my collection. And I added permanent alizarin crimson, I added the transparent orange, the Van Dyke brown, the cobalt turquoise light, and the indigo, and I'm much happier with this palette. I think it's something that I would use a lot more. So I like the Winsor and Newtons. I cannot justify the price of them in Australia, but maybe one day if we ever get to travel overseas again and we go to the UK, I might see if they've got some cheaper Winsor and Newton things there. Now I come to one of my smaller sets, which is in one of the Prima Marketing watercolour sets that I had extra after I took out all of the paints and put them in the large tin. So I had a few tubes of Holbein to begin with, and I think this itty bitty one was one of the first ones I got because it was in a bargain bin, and that's an indigo. This one's a 5ml, but all of the other tubes I have are 15ml because really they are better value for money. And I had a few to begin with, but then I decided to fill up one of these tins completely with Holbein. This is my set of Holbein watercolours, which is completely jam-packed full. I do still have this insert, and technically you could pull it out, and I think it fits maybe a couple more pans like that, but I just prefer it in here because they're all nice and sturdy. I probably didn't need both Shell Pink and Brilliant Pink, but it's one of the only companies of paints that I've really been able to find nice pastel pinks that I really like. The Shell Pink I tend to use more for skin tones, and I just enjoyed the Brilliant Pink, so I got it. So originally I got the Brilliant Pink and the Brilliant Orange because I had a set, which is a much larger tin, a 48 tin, of all of the watercolour tubes that I had, which is a mix of Daniel Smith, Holbein, and some Art Spectrum, and I'll show those in a minute, but I ended up with enough Holbeins to fill one whole tin, and I haven't gotten any more since just because I don't really want to have to make a bigger tin. I'm happy with this one. This is really handy. I often take this when I travel, so the Holbeins last ages. I mean, some of them it looks like are barely used at all, although I have done. The Burnt Umber I've used quite a bit by comparison, and you can see that some of the tubes are in this design. I think this is the older design, and then this design is the newer. But they're all the same paints, and they're very nice to use. I recommend these as professional watercolour paints that I really enjoy using. And in Australia they are a little bit cheaper than Daniel Smith and Schmincke and Winsor and Newton, so they're a good alternative brand to get if you're in Australia. These are pretty good. I just realised I filmed some of this without the lights on, so I hope it's not created too many shadows, but I've remembered now. Anyway, this is the other Prima Marketing box that I have laying around. I actually still have some in my drawers that are empty and for future paints. I did the same thing with the Art Spectrum as I did with the Holbein, in that I originally had a few of these all in, and the Holbeins, etc., in one palette, but then I ended up buying enough to fill a whole thing here. Art Spectrum is an Australian company that's been around for well over 30 years, possibly longer, and they have really nice art supplies, and these are their professional range. I only have a few of them, but this is something that I would probably consider collecting the whole set of eventually, because they're easy to get and they're cheaper in Australia, and I also really like them. I've not really seen much in the way of reviews on YouTube about Art Spectrum paints, so I'm assuming that they're not so easy to get overseas in America or the UK or Europe. So a future video will be an in-depth look into these paints, I think, because I'm sure you're interested to see what they're like. I really need to redo this one. This one is so old. It's one of my first sets that I managed to complete. And as you can see, they do crack a little bit, which is the nature of some paints. And I have managed to collect all of the Australian colours, which really are similar to other colours in other sets because the pigments are the same. But some of the colours are quite sort of unique, either the mixes they have. And one of my absolute favourites is Australian Green Gold. I really love this colour. It's so versatile. And I also like the Leaf Green Dark and the Australian Turquoise, which is kind of like a cobalt turquoise blue, or light in other brands, I think, but it is such a beautiful colour. I think this one was the most expensive of all of the paints. But I will definitely do a review on these and swatch them out again, because these have been sitting here for a little while. And yeah, I wouldn't mind collecting more of the colours as I go, but for now, this is more than enough. Maimeri Blue, or is that Maimeri Blue? I never know. This is all I have in this brand of paints. They were on clearance at my local art store, because since then they've changed all of their packaging and quite possibly the formulation of the paints, but these were at least 30% off, and so I just grabbed a few colours to try out, and I made an old eyeshadow palette, and I experimented with some enamel paints and it was a bit of a disaster. As you can see, I didn't let that dry long enough and it's just all buckled up, but the colours themselves are really lovely. They're really vibrant, and I made this little palette, and it's actually quite handy for travel. I ended up with an extra colour because that yellow was a lot more opaque and pale than I was expecting, and then I found this on a subsequent trip, which was a nice bright yellow, so I will eventually put all of these into a proper palette, but for now I have this tiny little travel one. Now, I haven't done a lot with these paints yet, but they do seem to be very nice. I would like to do some more paintings with them, so I need to get onto that. These tubes came out maybe about 6 months ago, and they were released at a local art store called Zart Art and Craft, and I've never seen them anywhere else. They are Eraldo de Paulo, and I'm pretty sure they're an Australian brand. Sorry if that was out of focus for a moment there. But the one thing they do have on them, they actually have a series, a light fastness rating, and they also have the pigment number. So I figured, how bad can they be if they have all of that on, because usually crappy paints won't have any of this information. They're not too bad. I haven't used them very much yet. I've squeezed them out into a palette and promptly put it in the drawer and forgotten about it completely, so I've just been reminded of them today, and yes, I really need to actually get it out and use it. The Viridian on this one is PG7, which is actually phthalo green blue shade, but that's actually preferable anyway because phthalo greens are much easier to re-wet than Viridian. But I basically picked a bunch. They were on sale half price. I think they were $4 a tube, and I had this little plastic palette and I filled them up with those. So There is space to add more, but I just thought I would fill the pre-made pans. I tried sticking half pans in, but they were just really annoying. It's just not quite the right fit, and they kept falling out or just, you know, maybe standing up too much. So I gave up on that and I just poured the paint straight into it. I did have a swatch card, but I seem to have lost it, so I guess I'll be swatching these out again. And yeah, they've dried pretty well. This one's the only one that's got any cracking, or maybe this one here as well. But otherwise, they're not too bad. So I will definitely have to give these another try now that I've remembered they're in there. I have a few miscellaneous paints. One is a Zart Art sample of ultramarine, and that's the only paint I have of theirs. I've tested it out, it seems fine. And I have one tube of M. Graham and Company watercolour in dioxazine purple. I would love to have more of these, but they're expensive and I really can't justify it right now because I have so many other paints. But if I was to get any others, this would be one I would invest in eventually. And I also have a couple of sample tubes of Mission Gold in Viridian, which I think is a phthalo green, and Rose Madder. These are very nice as well, but once again I don't really need them. I just happened to get them. I think they were on Jackson's, and you know how they do this, the sample packs of things, so I just grabbed it when I was ordering some other stuff. I found another metal tin, and this is another Prima one, and in this I actually had to go at making some watercolours myself because I have some pigment powders, and these are the colours I have. Look, there's a potter's pink there too, and that potter's pink is quite nice. Some of these are really old-fashioned colours like Egyptian blue and lapis lazuli. I really like their lapis lazuli. If you've ever tried the one by Daniel Smith, you'll know that their one is incredibly hard to re-wet, and it's also very, very low pigmented. Whereas when I got some pigment powder and made some, it came out quite well. But I haven't quite mastered the levels of gum arabic and perhaps glycerine or honey to put in yet, so they are a total disaster. They're all cracked and they are a bit of a mess, but this was basically me experimenting with some of these different paints, and it was really fun, but boy is it time consuming. It just took forever to do them. I think that one's lapis lazuli there. And yeah, so back to the drawing board with these, but I had fun making them and it was good to experiment, so I may do more of this in the future. But that was one of the other tins that I had lying around, and I think I have one or two more of these just spare. Okay, this video is getting really long, so I think I'll actually upload a second part to it. You will find in the second part I've got my larger sets, and I'm including paints like Schmincke, Daniel Smith and Sennelier. So I hope you've been enjoying so far, and if you have been, don't forget to click the thumbs up button and write any comments you want, and also subscribe if you haven't already done so. So stay tuned for part 2, which is coming out in a few days time on Saturday, and until then I'll swatch you later. Bye!